win's a win's a win. It's hard to win in this league, and I don't care how you do it. Bottom line is you got to try to figure out a way.
A win is a win is a win. Welcome into Teal, the show. The Jaguars got a win, and that means they're in the playoffs. Frank Franchi is joining us now. Frank, we're talking about a postseason Jaguars team. How about that?
Yeah, and I agree with Doug. It doesn't matter how you win, Jamal. Get in the tournament, because once you're in the tournament, anybody can win. You know what? There's 32 teams, only 14 made the tournament. After this week, only 8 are left, so I don't care how you win. And I even think the sign of a good team is when you don't have your A game, find a way to win anyway. The best part of your team isn't functioning, which is their offense. Find a win. I thought it was a great win, and what an environment on Saturday night.
Oh, that environment at the bank. Jaguars fans showed up, showed out, and they did their part. Frank, I think you kind of bring us to our first thing that we got to talk about. That win was ugly, though. Jaguars didn't exactly put on the best show, but it was a dramatic ending and one that the fans in the stands at the bank liked to see. But it was an ugly win. But you mentioned it. Good teams find a way to win ugly. I mean, how many times have we seen some of these consistent programs like the Steelers or the Patriots or the Ravens win games like that where everything seems like it's going wrong for 3 quarters and then they just hang around, and then the play breaks and they win the game?
Jamal, I think the best teams I've ever seen play win when they're not using the stuff they win with. The Patriots, of all those great years with Brady, there were some games they'd win 13-10 because they could win a bunch of different ways. Those Steeler teams that were always so good defensively, every now and then Ben Roethlisberger beats you 35-31. The teams that are the best can beat you when their A game isn't there or when the best thing they do isn't working. Look, the Jaguars played the Titans in a Titans type of game. That's how the Titans wanted the game to go, Jamal. They wanted it low scoring, physical, a lot of running, long, slow possessions. That's how the game went, and the Jaguars still won the game. That's a sign of a good team. They can win their way and your way.
That's right, Frank. They didn't win their way, but as Doug Peterson said to open the show, a win is a win is a win.
Sometimes you're going to score 40, sometimes you're going to score 20, or 10. And, sometimes the offense is hot and sometimes they're not. Defense is smoking, or special teams, whoever it might be. And that was the type of game it was, this past Saturday. I mean, that's a good football team, that we played. And look, they were playing for the same things we were playing for. And that was a win and in scenario. Wasn't our best offensively, we know that. But it was one of our best games defensively and on special teams. So that's just how football seasons go. That's how teams go. And this time of year, it really doesn't matter as long as you figure out a way, to win that game.
Part of the reason that they had to kind of win ugly like that, Frank, the offense hasn't exactly been explosive. We've seen Trevor Lawrence and this offense hang points on some teams this year. They've kind of gotten hot, but maybe the past 3 weeks now, they've kind of slowed down. It wasn't their best against the Titans, wasn't their best against the Texans, wasn't their best against the Jets. Maybe getting into a little bit of a rut here.
Yeah, I think there's different reasons for all of them, Jamal. The weather in New York, they didn't attack much because it was so miserable up there. The Texans game was a weird game. That was get a lead and then just stay healthy. This game, I thought the Titans front really dominated. I thought Tierra Tart and Jeffrey Simmons, those 2 terrific tackles, that might be the best pair of tackles, inside guys in the league. They're really good players. And I thought they dominated the Jags inside. That's why the Jags had a tough time running the football. And I thought sometimes Trevor had to throw off his back foot a time or two. So there's different reasons. I thought the Titans were the more physical team. Usually when you're the more physical team, you win the game. They didn't. The Jags won it. But I thought that's what happened to the offense. Now, look, Trevor missed some throws, but he had pressure in his face on almost every throw he made. And so I'm not surprised he was off a little bit. The Titans were the more physical team, but the Jags still won the game.
Yeah. The offense hasn't necessarily been itself, but Doug Peterson not really worried about it getting back on the right foot this week.
Not concerned, but we've got to do a job, this week in preparation. We got to get our guys prepared, and they got to, we got to get them focused in a little bit, for whatever reason. But, I'm not concerned from the standpoint of we've kind of been through it, this season. Obviously now it's not the time to take a step back. And, but really looking forward to this week of preparation and, for this game Saturday night.
That brings us to the matchup in the wild card round of the playoffs for the Jaguars. They're going to take on the Chargers again. Frank, this is a team this is a matchup between teams that have already played once this season, almost like a division round matchup where you see the team for a second time. Jaguars and Chargers played back in week 3. Jaguars got a big win. That was part of that 2-1 start to the year where everybody was like, wow, the Jaguars might be for real.
Two thoughts on that. Number one, it's hard to take too much or to glean too much from that game and apply it to this game because, look, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, their two terrific receivers, didn't play. Both of the great pass rusher got hurt early in the game. Justin Herbert was playing with the sore ribs, remember that? Now all those guys are healthy. It's also been a long time, so it's hard to make too many comparisons. But I will say this, they beat them 38-10. When you see the team on the other sideline and you know you've handled them, there is an air of confidence. So don't think it doesn't matter at all. For people that say that first game doesn't matter at all, I disagree with that. But you can't draw the comparisons because the Chargers will bring a different team to TIAA Bank Field than they put on the field that day. So I get that part, but I think there is some confidence when you play a team you've beaten.
Yeah, there definitely should be a little extra swagger when you're playing against a team that you beat, especially in that way. But when it was week 3, both teams have changed a lot since that matchup.
That's a long time ago. I mean, you know, there's some new faces on their side, there's some new faces on our side, and you know, schematically probably both the same, you know, with us and with them. And really, again, we've talked about it a lot. I mean, you're not gonna trick anybody. It just comes down to execution, you know, both sides, them and us. And
it's going to be another Saturday night at TIAA Bank Field. When Teal the Show returns, we'll talk a little bit more about the matchup. Stay tuned. There's more Jaguars ahead. Welcome back into Teal the Show. Frank, this is a big game. Saturday night at the bank. We're doing it again, second week in a row. The fans showed up in a big way for that last game, and I think they had a big impact on how the game flow was. And at times you could kind of feel everyone on the edge of their seats. It was quiet, and then something would happen, and you just hear the place erupt. And especially toward the end, when you saw that Josh Allen play, that might be the loudest I've ever heard TIAA Bank Field.
Yeah, boy, certainly the loudest in a long time, Jamal. I'll tell you this. The crowd made a difference in those real crunch plays. I thought the crowd made a difference at the end of the game. Josh Dobbs couldn't really hear. He panicked he played a good game, but he panicked just a little bit on the 2 mistakes, the long interception to Tyson Campbell, and then obviously the game winner, the fumble that Josh Allen ran back in. So I thought the crowd affected that. But I think the crowd will have even more energy this week. Because of the style of play, the way the Titans play, they can take a crowd out of it. There's long, slow drives. Derrick Henry for 5 yards, then 3 yards, then 8 yards, and slow the game down and stretch the game out. And that can take the crowd out of it a little bit, and it happened some last week. The Chargers don't play like that. They play fast like the Jaguars do. They throw it a lot. So when there's more activity, the crowd stays involved more. As much as the crowd affected last week's game, and I agree with you, I thought it did, I think it'll be even more of a factor this week with fireworks all around. I really do.
All right, Frank, I know everybody's chomping at the bit to talk about that playoff game, but we got to talk a little bit more about this Titans matchup, which was essentially a playoff game, but it was a big one. I thought there were a couple of players on that defense that really showed out in a big way. Trayvon Walker, kind of a quiet kind of day, but I thought he was really impactful in stopping the run and slowing down Derrick Henry.
He's hard to block, Jamal. He may not come flying around and sack you all day long and bat passes down. He doesn't do stuff out in space like more pure natural pass rushers do, but he's hard to block. He's sturdy, man. He's physical at the point of impact. That's what Trayvon gives you. He's hard to block. So he's always going to clog up areas. He's going to disrupt. He's very disruptive. Again, he's not a play out in space, come flying off the edge and sack you all the time guy, but I agree with you. He played well in that game, and he's a big physical part of that defense.
Sturdy. I like that one, Frank. He's sturdy. All right. The guy on the other side of him, we've been critical of Josh Allen at times. I think he can be more disruptive than productive at times in his career. Got a lot of pressures, but he showed up at the biggest moment in that game. I mean, the scoop and score was the big play, but I thought that next drive, when he was able to force that fumble from Josh Dobbs, even though the Titans picked it up, that was a huge play and a huge moment to make sure that the Titans couldn't get going down the field. Josh Allen showed up when the Jaguars needed him to.
Yeah, and he's played better of late, Jamal. Josh, middle of the season, wasn't playing very well, wasn't impacting the game very much, and we all knew that. He has played much better. Isn't it interesting, though? The biggest play of the Jaguars season, maybe the biggest play of Josh Allen's career, came when he wasn't rushing the passer, when he was dropping into coverage. Think about how odd that is. He was dropping into coverage. The ball popped out. He got a great bounce, by the way. and he ran it back. So of all the pass rushing conversations we've had about Josh Allen, the biggest play of the year for the Jaguars and the biggest play of Josh Allen's career was when he was dropping into coverage. Go figure. Doesn't work that way very often.
It really doesn't. And we can't talk about big plays for the Jaguars defense without talking about Rayshawn Jenkins. Frank, think about the season this guy's having. I mean, this is a guy who ended up on IR last year with an ankle injury. Fans were clamoring that he was overpaid and was a bad bring-in. And then look at where he's at now. I mean, he's having a phenomenal year. Maybe the two biggest defensive plays of the season for the Jaguars, that pick six against the Cowboys, the walk-off touchdown, and the forced fumble against Josh Dobbs that essentially put the ball in Josh Allen's hands to get the Jaguars into the playoffs. I mean, Rayshawn Jenkins has been the playmaker when the Jaguars have needed one.
There are two most important defensive players in my mind, and Tyson Campbell's been terrific and other guys at times, but the two most important defensive players have been Foye Oluokun and Rayshawn Jenkins.
Yeah.
Rayshawn because he's been a playmaker, because he's added a body in the box. He's so good in run defense. He's harassed passers when he blitzed, and he's made the two biggest plays. You're right, the interception for a return to pick six to beat Dallas, and then causing this fumble to beat Tennessee. I think he has been dramatically better. I had no idea he was this good of a player. He's a really good player. Oluokun, I think, is probably their most valuable defensive player. Jamal, he led the league in tackles again. He led the league in solo tackles by 20 tackles. So I think Oluokun's been really good, and I think Rayshawn Jenkins, you're right, has been a real find this year. No question about it.
Yeah, Foye wearing that number 23 can throw me off every once in a while, but he makes it look good on a linebacker. All right, let's talk about that playoff matchup, Frank. The Chargers are coming to town. This is a Week 3 rematch. A lot of guys had a big impact for the Jaguars, but one of the things that we talked about early in the season when the Jaguars were making the trip to L.A. was the long flight from the East Coast to the West Coast. Well, now the Jaguars are going to be the home team, so that means that the Chargers have to come from the West Coast to the East Coast. Do you think they can have the same impact on them that I guess the Jaguars have always struggled when they've had to take that long flight?
And with a short week, Jamal, I think when you have that, when you have to come across country and it's a short week, that has to affect you some. That doesn't mean it's going to debilitate you, but it's got to affect the team some. It's naive to think that it's not going to. So, yeah, I do think so. I will say this. The Chargers have a lot to prove. Remember, Justin Herbert's never even played in a playoff game. We talk about all this about Justin Herbert. This is his first playoff game, cross-country, on a short week, so he's got a lot to prove. The Chargers are always a team, or have been always a team that comes up short. They look good on paper. They're pretty to watch, but at the end of the day, they're not there. Well, they know that. They were that way in San Diego, and they've been that way a little bit in Los Angeles. They know they're a team with a lot to prove, so they're going to have a chip on their shoulder, too. First playoff game for a lot of these guys. Remember, it's a different team than the first time, as we talked earlier. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, a healthy Bosa will all be in this game. But, yeah, I think the short week could affect them traveling this far. I do.
They're much healthier than when the Jaguars took them on in Week 3. All right, Frank, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. These are two of the better young quarterbacks in the NFL. Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence. If you were building a team right now, which one of these two guys would you take?
Trevor. And it's an easy decision for me. Part of it's I'm biased, and he's our guy, okay? But I really do think there's a reason Trevor Lawrence would have been the first pick in the draft if he'd have come out Justin's year. All right? I think he's really good. Justin Herbert's a terrific player. There's no debating that. And he's going to be a good player if he stays healthy for a lot of years. But I think Trevor has more upside. I think Trevor's arm is every bit as good. I think he's just as athletic. I think his knack is better. I mean, look at the year Trevor's had this year. Remember, he lost a year of development under Urban Meyer. I really believe that. So I think 4 years from now, they'll be among the two better quarterbacks in the league. I think Trevor will be the better of the two. And I think I would feel that way no matter what team I was following. But I follow this team, and I really believe that.
All right, Frank, is it a closer debate on which one of them has the better head of hair?
Yes, that one's a toss-up. I need to toss a coin for that one.
We'll flip a coin on that one. All right, Frank, thanks for being here. Thank you at home for tuning in. We'll have another episode of Teal the Show on Friday night as we get you ready for a Saturday night at TIAA Bank Field. Should be a fun week. Good night, and go Jags.